After a week's hiatus, I'm back and ready to review the final two shows of The Voice Australia Season 3. Hi, my name is Dr. Dan and this is the Fifth Chair Project, a weekly video review of the performers and their performances. For the past 11 weeks, we've been watching the slow and arduous reduction of competitors, firstly at the hands of the celebrity coaches, and more recently through the democratic process known as public humiliation, I mean voting. And now we've finally arrived at our top four. Do we have the best four voices Australia has to offer as suggested by the TV advertising? I'll answer that question by naming a few contestants no longer with us. Cheetah Henneberry, Hayley Jensen, Felly Irvine, C Major, Sabrina Batshon and Kat Jade. Not an exhaustive list, but I think you get my point. I'll save my more pointed comments for next week's final episode of The Fifth Chair. For now, let's take a moment to quickly review last week's show. In order to catch up on the performances from last week, I watched the 90-second presentations on YouTube in quick-fire succession, one after the other. This is the first time I've reviewed the artists in this manner. Typically I've watched the TV show as it's aired live. In viewing the performances without the extraneous TV production, I was once again struck by the general lack of stagecraft and charisma on display. Perhaps with the exception of Anja Nissen's performance, the singers failed to rally any sense of excitement in me. Now, so as not to provoke any comments of suggested bias at this stage of the competition, I'm going to use two of my final top 8 choices, Kat Jade and Sabrina Batshon, to highlight my point. Firstly, let's watch Kat singing Telephone by Lady Gaga. Now, watch Sabrina sing Florence and the Machine's Spectrum. Both performances are reasonable vocal renditions, and both girls show us that they deserve to be in the final 8 when compared with the 56 other starters. This being said, both performances are rather flat. They're missing what another TV talent show calls the X Factor. Without getting into the debate of nurture versus nature, what is clear is that nearly all our finalists currently lack that special something on stage. Personally, I believe that the X Factor can be developed like a muscle, but unlike other muscles, there's no steroid that expedites the unnatural growth and development of performance charisma. No amount of lights, dancers, high-level session musicians or stage design can make up for an artist's lack of performance energy on stage. Last week showed us this in spades. Now, I will grant those who disagree with my review that this topic is quite subjective and therefore open to personal interpretation. But in this particular instance, I don't believe there's much room for confusion or implied bias. Each of the final 8 competitors has a lot of room for growth in their stagecraft and presence. Three weeks ago, during episode 8, I commented on the poor pitch and intonation displayed by many of the performers. We reviewed the difference between laryngeal tuning and tonal tuning. Now, during that review, I noted that many performers struggle with tonal tuning, the management of intonation as the sound travels through the vocal tract. I also noted, for those of you who weren't paying attention, that one of the main contributors to poor laryngeal pitching is swollen vocal folds. The next performance highlights this very fact. Have a close listen to Jackson Thomas singing When the War is Over. Jackson's voice handles the performance until he decides to add vocal growl to his interpretation. From that point forward, his vocal folds struggle to maintain the pitch. They have swollen to a point where they find it difficult to oscillate freely. What is particularly interesting about this is Sabrina had been coached by Ricky not to overextend her voice for her performance. Now, it would seem, on the surface of it, that both performances had been given contradicting instruction by Ricky. For what it's worth, my assessment is that Jackson should not have growled through his song, while Sabrina probably should have given us more. In Sabrina's defence, it was revealed that she had had no voice on Sunday due to laryngitis and she'd received instruction to observe complete vocal rest. Sound familiar? I gave the exact same advice 3 weeks ago during episode 8. Someone's been listening and learning. Without seeking to harp on about this, poor intonation has run rampant throughout this year's season of The Voice Australia. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, singing is not about perfect notes. It's about communication. But ultimately, at a professional level, it's both. At a professional level, you need to be able to communicate and communicate in tune. Well, we are nearly there. 56 has, with the magic of modern TV programming, become 4. Hang on. No, stop the press. We've changed the rules at the last moment. 56 has now become 5. At the commencement of the journey, I chose 8 performers. Singers who, based on their blind audition performances, seem to vocally stand out from the rest. Now, it's taken nearly 12 weeks for my Dr. Dan's top 8 to be completely decimated by the natural selection of viewer voting. Over the past couple of weeks, I've lost my final 3. Ellie O, Kat Jade and Sabrina Batchon all succumbed to the harsh realities of TV talent shows. Both Kat and Sabrina have shown us that they are wonderfully talented singers who, with some performance coaching, could develop into excellent artists. Ellie O wowed us all with her blind audition piece, but I was critical of her vocal performances after that point. Before we assign Ellie to yesterday's news, I would like to acknowledge that her final performance during last week's show was far more measured and sustainable. Given that I critiqued her vocals as unsustainable a few weeks back, I thought I should give credit where credit is due. Well done, Ellie. Your final performance showed real improvement. It was far more sustainable. Next week, I will close off with my pick of the series. So that means that this announcement is my final pick of the week. This week's winner was hard to choose, mostly because no one is really putting their hand up and saying, pick me. Nevertheless, I have given my pick to Anja Nissen for singing the Whitney Houston hit, I Have Nothing. For an 18-year-old to sing this difficult power ballad with such apparent ease is pretty impressive. Next week, we choose our winner. For what it's worth, I'll take a punt and offer the following prediction. Based on my observations of current audience trends and careful programming by the show's director, I think we'll be watching ZK standing next to Johnny Rollins in the end, with Johnny Rollins taking the win. Let's see how my punt plays out. As always, your guess is as good as mine. For what it's worth, Anja Nissen is the only remaining contestant worthy of the title The Voice, but I don't believe she'll take out the prize. So, there it is. I only get to sign off from this series twice more. So I'll say goodbye until next week by stating, I'm Dr. Dan, sing well.